So one of the releases last year that came out towards the end of the year. I waited to listen to it until I got the physical copy, which was last week. It's been on pre-order for a long time. And what I'm talking about is Ceremonial Bloodbath's second full-length album, Genesis of Malignant Entropy. This was out on Sentient Ruin Laboratories, which is a heavily underrated underground label. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But yeah, their first album, The Tides of Blood, came out in 2020, and that was also on Sentient Ruin. I think there was a couple of other underground labels that pressed like the CDs and the tapes too. Um, but that album was spectacular, and I loved that album. It was, it's 10 out of 10, perfect blackened death metal album. It's an underground cult classic. I think a lot of people really, really have high praise of it, and definitely warranted. So their second full length, when it was announced that it was coming out, I was super pumped about it because, again, it had been a while. It's been a couple years since their first full length came out, and they had been popping up with the demo and a single here and there, but it wasn't anything like an EP or anything like that. So the band is out of Canada, and like I said, this is their second full-length album. It consists of members that are in several other bands, Death Wish and Coffinate, Grave Infestation, a bunch of other underground bands that I'm familiar with. I've heard a couple of these bands and have listened to on occasion. So they're definitely pioneers. Well, I wouldn't say pioneers, but they're definitely heavily involved into the underground black metal, death metal realms of extreme metal. So I got it in finally. Here's the CD. So I will show this first before I talk about the music. Get rid of that jewel case glare. Like I said, this came from Sentient Ruin Laboratories. This label is totally underrated. They've released so much stuff over the years that I have in my collection. I've shown off on here several times. And this is one of those releases that I was really, really excited to get. And even though I had the digital download of it because I pre-ordered this on Bandcamp, I waited until I got the physical release. So I probably would have talked about this when it came out last year. Let's see, when did it come out? It came out November 17th. So yeah, it was pretty late into the year. So here's the cover right there. A nice little booklet of some artwork. I kept the hype sticker. There you go if you want to pause that and read that. It definitely says for fans of Blasphemy, Titan Blood, Bestial Warlust, Deicide, Archgoat, and Sarcophago. 100% agree with all of those. There's a lot of influences across the board, especially with Titan Blood, Blasphemy, Bestial, all of them. Deicide, maybe not as much. But the rest of the band's 100% sure. So there's the booklet, and then here's the other side. The artist, I really like the artwork. Can't read who the artist is. I'll pop it right here when I figure out who that is. And then here's the CD itself. Red print, and then some more images on the tray table, which it looks like it's just a replica of what you're seeing on the cover. And then the back, here's the band. I really like the back of this jewel case. It reminds me of the back of a vinyl record. A lot of my records in the past have looked similar to this, where it's got the track list and the band picture. So there you go. So yeah, blackened death metal, definitely in the war metal vein. It's got that war metal vibe to it, and especially with the repetitive, like super assaulting drums and guitars, just sounding like they're just completely hammering you in the head. But this album is slightly different than their first album. There's a lot of similarities in their first album, but the music is a little bit crunchier sounding, a little bit vibrant sounding, not as dissonant and thicker as Tides of Blood was. It had like a much more dissonant, thicker sound to it. Definitely still had similar cadences and tempo styles of that war metal that you get throughout the whole entire album. That similarities is definitely still on this. That's definitely more present on this. This sounds way more like a war metal album than their first album did. The first album was very much a very well written, very good black and death metal album. There's a lot of black metal elements into it, in the vein of like Blasphemy and even Revenge, Conqueror, that type of black metal style. is heavily influenced throughout all of this, even Bestial Warlust too, in a more cohesive, like more digestible manner, I guess you could say. Some of that stuff is a little bit harsher on the ears. I wouldn't say this is harsh on the ears. It's definitely pummeling and assaulting, but it's got a little bit more variance than some of those other like war metal sounding albums. I would even throw in Antichrist Siege Machine. If you're a fan of that band, you probably really enjoy this album. So I really like this album. I definitely think it's something that I won't listen to all the time, especially if I'm not in the mood for this style of like blackened death metal that with that like war metal vibe to it. As of late, I have been in the mood for that, and I have been listening to a lot of that because I've been showing it off on here. So this definitely scratched the itch, and definitely proved to be a very good sophomore album. I think they have a formula and they're doing it really well, but I will say it does get a little bit repetitive. And it can be a little bit hard to distinguish song from song if you're not actually paying attention. So if you're just have this on the background while you're working and doing things, not paying much attention to the music, you may think that you've heard the same song a couple of times. So that's the only like kind of negative comment that I would have on this. But otherwise, if you really put on the headphones and you really sink your teeth in and listen to it, it is an enjoyable listen, especially if you're into this style of death metal with black metal and black and death metal. So the band is awesome. I really like this band. I'm excited to see where they go from here. Hopefully, maybe their sound does kind of progress a little bit more, but I don't know. Sometimes with bands like this that make this kind of music, the sound progression isn't as much. They got a formula. They keep doing it. They do what the fans like. So, but again, we're not at that point yet. Let's talk about this album. It's a good album. I really enjoy it. Do I like it more than the Tides of Blood? That's always the question I get. Do you like it more than the previous album? Do you like it more than your favorite album? I don't know. I've only had it for almost 2 weeks now. I need to spend a little bit more time with it. I haven't listened to the Tides of Blood in a while, and I pulled it out and I listened to it after I got this, and I did kind of a comparison back and forth. And I'm so familiar with the Tides of Blood. It's been out since 2020, so it's been several years now that I've listened to it. That it's hard to say if I like this album more because I haven't had that much time with it. There's a lot of similarities across the board. They haven't like progressed their sound a ton. They haven't added a bunch of like layering or anything like that, like different styles of music or anything like that. Not anything like Tomb Mold has done with their newer album or anything like that. So I think I just need a little bit more time with it, but it is a good album and it's definitely worth buying, especially if you're into this kind of music. I would say the album artwork is exactly what you are expecting to get when you listen to this. It's got that like nuclear assaulting, just war metal destroyer of the earth type of vibe. And if you like that, then you'll enjoy this. Sentient Ruin Laboratories also is a pretty underrated label. And if you've never bought from them, you definitely should consider it because they put out a lot of good stuff. And I'm going to show some of that stuff right now so you can get a little bit more familiar with this band, or with this label, this band. What the heck am I talking about? So let me just fix my screen here. So they do have a Bandcamp page, as you can see here, and they've put out a lot of stuff over the years. I own quite a bit of things, mostly on tape, but last year they had a really good release year. Sulfuric Hatred was one of my favorite releases last year. This is the singer of Undeath Alex's side project band that he has. Great album. I have this on pre-order. They have some really bad delays right now with their pressing plant, and it's just taking forever for this stuff to come in. So eventually it'll get here, and I'm excited about it. So I had this on pre-order. Abyssal Rift is another really good release that came out last year. Definitely check this band out. Here's Ceremonial Bloodbath. I can't pronounce this band's name, but this was also another really good release. Definitely more of a mixture of like noise grind, kind of death metal. Definitely got a war metal sound to it, more war metal than anything. This is definitely a really good album too. One of their good releases that came out last year. So they put out a lot of really good stuff. Abhorrency they've put out. I own that. Invitation is another really good album that came out last year. I need to talk about that. That flew under my radar until the very end of the year. And I need to talk about that. It was a really good album. They released Vacuous's first album on here, which is an awesome UK band. So yeah, this band, this label has been around for a while. They've been putting out awesome stuff. Pust the Length was good. That came out last year. Negative Vortex was another really good release that came out last year. 2022, so over a year ago. Altars of Gore, they reissued this. I've shown that off on here. I've shown off a lot of these things on here. So Sentient Ruin is definitely a really underrated label. I think more people should pay attention to them. Anti-Creation was another really good release that they put out. So they've been around for a while. Here's a Ceremonial Bloodbath. I think this was a demo that came out before, a couple years ago. But a lot of good stuff. So aside from their Bandcamp, they also do have a website that you can buy directly from if you don't want to go through Bandcamp. So here is pretty much like their home, their news. If you go to the releases page, this is where you can buy their stuff. You just click on it, and then here you go. Select the variant. So there's often tons of vinyl and all that stuff. So this is just, in general, as a whole, an awesome label. So I wanted to shout them out too. Definitely keep them on your radar. Follow them on Bandcamp because they send out, blasts and messages. Follow them on Instagram and other social media platforms, and listen to the releases. It's really, really good stuff. It's a mix of just death metal and black metal and blackened death metal and all across the board, extreme metal genres. They offer a lot of different various releases. So that is all that I had today. Let me know your thoughts if you've heard this album. Very, very good. I definitely give it a seal of approval and a recommendation. Really good release that came out last year, and I'm glad that I finally have it. And I've been able to spend more time with it. And like I said, it's been out since November, so you already might already be on this, and I'm just behind on this. So, but that's all that I have today. I will see you guys in the next one.